Mr. Murren, like to start with this. Of all the things I've read about that night, I have not read where you were and what you were doing when someone presumably called you. Tell me where you were, what you were doing, and who called you and what they said.
So I was on the East Coast actually, and MGM has a security protocol system in place, which is a trunk line system. So my phone rang immediately within literally seconds after the shooting. And we set up our task force within the company. So it was East Coast, found out less than a minute after the shooting began, and made my travel arrangements to get back here to Las Vegas. I got back here first thing in the morning.
So I imagine over the next couple of hours, information is dribbling in, and it gets worse every time you hear more information.
I'd say the information was flooding in from multiple sources, not only from Mandalay Bay, from the Village Lot, from Metro, from third-party sources. We're trying to assimilate everything that was going on, and fortunately for us and for the community, we had a lot of people on site. We had security officers, engineers that were literally in the tower and providing first-person accounts so that Metro knew where to go as soon as they could. But it was extraordinarily chaotic in those first several hours.
As the numbers rise and the news gets worse, what's going through your head? You're on the other side of the country, frustrated that you're not here, I would imagine, but what are you thinking?
I don't know that I was frustrated as much as I was sad, I was angry. I'm still angry. I was confused, but I was incredibly comforted in the fact that we plan for horrible situations. You never hope you ever have to be in one like this, but the planning does come into play. And so we had a protocol in place. We were closely aligned with Metro, and I was doing my best from a distance to ensure that we had the resources here in Las Vegas deployed in the right manner, and we did.
You said angry. Angry at whom?
I was angry at this evil man, this despicable, cowardly act of a single gunman that created a mass casualty event, terrorizing our community for reasons that to this day we don't understand. And I was angry and hurt for the people that were hurt. Not only those 58 beautiful lives, but their families and the hundreds of people that were injured, many of whom are my employees, and the thousands of people that have been emotionally scarred this past year, all because of one guy that had access to an arsenal, weaponry that no one should have, to create mass carnage. It still makes me angry.
Frustrating too, in that an exhaustive investigation by Metro, the FBI, they still have no motive, don't exactly know why the guy did it.
It's incredibly frustrating. No motive, no tells, we say in the casino business. There was no pattern that would suggest he was leading up to an event like this. There was, in the investigation, knowledge that he did cite other locations around the country. He did look at other high-point shooting type of situations, whether that was in Chicago or California or other places here in Las Vegas. That came after the fact, but why he wanted to do such a thing is unknown. And I think it's hard to bring closure to something when you have that open-ended question.
Must have been some dark nights for you in the last year as you're there alone and thinking about these events and going through the sequence and wondering, and you tell me, have you asked yourself, could I have done something different? Is this my fault?
There have been a lot of dark nights, but mostly because I feel for the people that were so much more profoundly impacted than me. This is about the victims, the families, and the people that were at the concert, including my CFO and his family that they're 2 doors down from us. And I know so many folks that were there. I know what Chuck Bowling, the president of Mandalay Bay, went through, and the thousands of employees at Mandalay Bay. I know that they've been suffering deeply. That creates dark thoughts. In terms of could we have done anything differently, that's something we would always ask ourselves. Safety has always been, George, our #1 priority here. We pride ourselves as a community and at MGM with our safety protocols, and they're always getting better. We serve 43 million visitors a year, every year, to Las Vegas. People come here because they feel confident that they will be safe, and that confidence is showing this year again, a year after this horrible act. Just last weekend, we had the Triple G Canelo fight, and then that's 20,000 people. The next night, we had the Golden Knights in a preseason game, over 18,000 people at T-Mobile. Lady Gaga is going to be selling out. We have other concerts coming. So we always look to improve our safety, our security measures, and we are always evolving them. A lot of those measures you see, many you do not see, because we look at safety as a multi-layered approach, working not only with law enforcement, but a variety of private companies, and we're always getting better.
Tricky stuff, though, safety versus the Las Vegas experience. Security can go too far. It can impinge on a visitor's experience overall. And in addition, no matter how oppressive security measures might be, they could never prevent every kind of attack, could they? I mean, some guy who's committed to doing some crazy thing and doesn't mind dying, there's no way to stop that, is there?
Well, Metro said that in their report. One of the observations is that it's really difficult, almost impossible, to stop a single individual in a random act of violence. You can prevent many potential tragedies, and the country does. But there's no surefire way of preventing every act. And yes, there is a balance between a protective barrier in resorts or office buildings or other hotels around the country and the guest experience. And we feel that here in Las Vegas, we have a unique network of security because of our close relationship with the other casinos here in town, with law enforcement, both in terms of Metro and federal law enforcement, to create a web of security that's unique to Las Vegas.
When your legal team comes to you and says, Mr. Murren, we've decided we're going to sue the survivors of the Route 91 concert, you're not a lawyer, but you understand the optics of that and what the headline will be and how people will read just the headline and not the substance of it. Did you push back on that? Did you embrace it? What was your reaction?
I took a deep breath. I knew the headline would be awful. The headline was awful. It sounds as if we were trying to hurt somebody, which is really the last thing we want to do. We're not seeking monetary damages. We're not trying to hurt any victim. What we're trying to do is what we've been trying to do since last October, do the best we can with the victims, the families, and literally everyone impacted. And when I was fully briefed on the situation, it became clear that the difficult but the right decision was to try to change the venue, to create a consolidation of these cases and put it into federal court where we believe it belongs. And the reason why we feel that strongly is that we believe that we can resolve these cases perhaps years earlier than the current path of having multiple cases in multiple states, deposing witnesses time and time again, reliving the horror for everyone involved. And so the headlines were awful. I feel bad. I think that now that people have taken the time to digest and understand what we're trying to accomplish here, which is simply to get to a resolution as soon as possible, there's a greater understanding that MGM is doing what it always tries to do. We try to do the right thing. And it's not always the easy thing. But we were taught to always try to do the right thing, and I believe this is the best path forward.
You've seen the inflammatory statements made by lawyers representing various interests. Everyone's going to sue everyone else and assign blame somewhere. They say things about you, your company, Metro, FBI. There's plenty of blame to go around. And then there are mainstream news organizations that have inflamed conspiracy theories, including local newspapers, national media. It's a conspiracy, the Saudis, there were helicopter gunships. There's a lot of bad information that's been out there. Would you respond to some of those in general and just the general tone of the coverage in the last year?
Well, it's a horrible event. And yes, there have been ugly headlines. There have been ugly accusations about companies, individuals. There's been character attacks on the police force, on our company. That's unfortunate, but I think it pales in the really important issue of focusing on, and whenever that happens, George, I focus on the 58 people who died and their families. Those are the real victims here. I'm a big boy, I can take some criticism. It's not about the criticism that our company has gotten. I think a lot of it's misdirected, it's hurtful, I think it's wrong, but really I focus most of my thinking and my energy is how do we help everyone that was impacted, those who have passed, those who are living, those who are still struggling with injuries or emotional damage. As it relates to the conspiracy theories, I heard a lot of them, and I think that's unfortunate because even at the moments after the shooting, there were several completely inaccurate reports, and what that did was make Metro's job harder, sending police officers on wild goose chases to other properties, sending in false reports in a chaotic, incredibly difficult situation. That reporting only made it worse and put more people in harm's way. I think the facts are pretty clear at this point, corroborated by federal agencies and by Metro. This was an act by a single gunman, a premeditated act, who over the course of several days brought up a small arsenal into his room, was allowed to get weapons that no one should be able to buy, creating machine guns out of semi-automatic weapons because he was allowed to buy bump stocks, which is outrageous at every level. And he chose to harm as many people as he could. But for the fact we had a security officer on the floor and an engineer nearby that was able to identify the room where this horrible, evil man was, it could have been a lot worse. So the facts in the report speak for themselves. An act of an evil man, an act that, as horrific as it was, could have been worse. He had plenty more bullets, and he was prepared to use them. An act that also showed a tremendous amount of courage. Courage of people at the Village Lot themselves that put themselves in harm's way to move people out. Courage at Mandalay Bay to put themselves in harm's way. People driving people to hospitals, many of whom were MGM employees, triaging wounds, helping those that have been injured. And if anything that I take out of this, and I have a lot of emotions around this, yes, anger, it's true, but I have an enormous sense of pride of this community. And I think that's what we should be thinking about, is a community that people from the outside looking in don't understand as well as you and I do. This is a community that actually does care for one another, that will help one another, and that was in evidence on that night, and I feel it today. And that's why I feel that we were moving forward. I feel the community stronger for this horrendous test that we've had. And I just want to help put this behind us for mostly the victims and their families.
Last question. How did this change Las Vegas forever? And speak more to how it changed the perception of Las Vegas as well. I saw it happen in these national newscasts where these cable networks were suddenly realizing, hey, Las Vegas is a real community after all. They would see people lining up at the blood banks, and they see your employees from different properties showing up to go to work to fill in for people at Mandalay Bay. So address sort of how it changed us in palpable ways and how it changed perception of Las Vegas.
I think the biggest takeaway is that we have arrived as a vibrant city. I think that up until that horrible day, we were considered to be a playground. We'd be a stop for businesses, for conventioneers, for tourists, but there's been little understanding of the fabric of the community that makes this all happen. You know, people now realize we have churches and mosques and synagogues. We live in communities. We care about the community. We coach Little League. We get involved in community events. And I think that courage and that collaboration came shining through in the days and weeks after 1 October. And I feel it today. And I can tell you that we hear a lot from our guests. We just had Microsoft in, the biggest convention we've ever had of Microsoft. They just left in August. They loved being here, they loved the hospitality, but they said, we want to help Las Vegas. We stand by you, Las Vegas. I met Lady Gaga, which was really cool. I met her Saturday night because she was at the Triple G Canelo fight. She said, I love Las Vegas. I stand by Las Vegas. The Golden Knights, what could be a better symbol of a community than our own Golden Knights, with the Las Vegas Aces, our women's basketball team, and the Raiders on the way. We are a great community, George. I've been here 20 years. I love Las Vegas. I think people have always loved to visit Las Vegas, but now they know there's love in Las Vegas of the people that are here, and that's going to be, to me, the biggest takeaway.
And the part about changing Las Vegas itself, I mean, are we different? I mean, we've had bad events before. We've had big crimes. We've had evil people. We've had disasters. Does this leave a mark that never goes away?
Americans are incredibly resilient people. But we always remember. I remember vividly, I'm sure you remember, where you were on 9/11. I was in San Francisco getting back here as fast as I could to see what I could do to help here in Las Vegas. This horrible act will be in our minds, in our hearts forever. But it's an act. It's a single act. And it does not mean we're going to let hate win. Hate never wins. And I believe here in Las Vegas, we've proven, the visitors are proving that we are confident about our community. We're confident that we're safe. We're going to continue to move forward and live our lives. And I think the combination of our friends around the world that know Las Vegas as a hospitality capital, and most importantly, the people like you and I that live here, we realize that we're something more than a playground. We are a community, a strong community that will work together. And God forbid there's another natural disaster. We have a flood someplace. We have somebody in need somewhere in this community. I think we all know we're all going to rally around whatever that challenge is. We proved that a year ago, and I think that makes me more confident that Las Vegas, its community, will continue to rush to help those in need.
I'm just thinking, is there anything else you want to say about your employees and how they responded? I know we're done, so, but that was one that you and I talked about before, your employees on that day and how they responded. If you, okay? We're okay?
Yeah, sure. One of the really poignant moments for me, George, was in the days after 1 October. I walked around a lot. I was at all of our properties, employee dining rooms, guest rooms, talking to our line employees. Tremendous amount of sadness, of fear, but of resilience. People saw things they should never have to see. Working in restaurants overlooking the lot, being on call in the lobbies of our properties, they saw things they will never forget. But they worked together, they rallied around one another, they asked each other what they could do to help, and it hurt. It hurts. And as we were approaching the anniversary, our focus is, of course, on the victims and the families, but also our employees. We are going to take a moment, quiet moments, to just tell each other we love each other, we support each other, we're sorry, we're moving forward together. And when I know and get to meet these courageous men and women that jumped in cars and went to the hospital with victims, that triaged people in the lobby of the MGM Grand lobby, that threw themselves on top of people while the shooting occurred, that were bringing people to Metro to show Metro, how to help, that were triaging wounds at multiple properties. I don't know how I would have reacted in that situation. I hope I would be as courageous as many of my employees were. I haven't been tested that way. They sadly were tested, but they passed the test, and I'm incredibly proud of them.